We have another presentation that is called People and Planet, and this will be brought to us by Josephine Sundquist. She is the Senior Strategic Advisor at the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, and this presentation is done in partnership with the United Nations Environmental Program. Josephine, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, and greetings of peace to you all in the conference. It has been a fantastic privilege to participate in this conference throughout these days since Monday. And my role now is to see how can we really connect the dots, because this conference is truly not a single event, but clearly feeds in to a larger structural processes that we are all in. So I will try to share experiences from our partnership between Sida, the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, and UN Environment, and the Faith for Earth initiative, and to also see how that links into some of the conclusions and discussions that are held right here, right now in the conference. I would like to start by sharing the background to our partnership, because back in March, 16th to 18th of March, we organized a global conference entitled People and Planet, Faith in the 2030 Agenda. And it was not only Sida and UN Environment, but we also had Stockholm International Water Institute as a core partner with us. And it was especially for the reason of their experience in the field of linking water, conflict, water diplomacy, and the role of faith leader and faith in that very process. And also on board, we had the Swedish Environmental Protection Agency, which is the government agency in Sweden that actually coordinates our work on the 2030 agenda together with us at Sida. And as you might see in this partnership, we were operating as secular actors. And some actors around the globe said, how come as secular actors, you're working on this normative dialogue around faith actors and the nexus of faith and environment? And the very reason for that is that we wanted to send a signal that the relevance of faith and faith actors and faith leaders for this nexus goes beyond faith actors themselves. It is something that concerns us all, as institutional donors, as the UN system at large, as academia, as private sector. So basically for all actors that are seriously investing and contributing to the achievements of the 2030 agenda, we need to take this seriously. And that's why we were stressing the importance of secular and faith partnerships to bring about the faith and environmental nexus. And we were organized in this conference in a similar manner as here. We had national hubs though, and not to the same extent regionals. So we had a hub in Jordan, Indonesia, Kenya, South Africa, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Sweden. And in each of these hubs, we were gathering up the scenery of representatives from the UN system, from government agencies, faith actors, secular NGOs, civil society actors, academia, and also representatives from our Swedish embassies. And why should we then link these two conferences, Faith in the 2030 Agenda and here, Faith for Nature? It's for the very reason that there are so many connecting dots between the dialogues and so many conclusions that we can draw and see that how can we actually work in a more catalytic way so that we are linking processes more effectively. And in the conference back in March, we were seeing that I want to share with you 4 important concepts to bring with us for more effective outcome of this faith and environmental nexus. The first is focus on impact and leaving no one behind. We are, as you all know, in the decade of action with only 10 years left. And COVID-19 has taken us backwards. So now we need to accelerate faster more than ever. And therefore, we need to identify resources that are outside development cooperation in its traditional way of the logic. So we actually need to see what's beyond. And here we have the faith sector that exists before a conflict, after a conflict, in the midst of the conflict, in the midst of the reconciliation, peace processes on the ground in the everyday life. So we need to focus on impact and we need to accelerate. The second thing is about driving transformational change. If we look at faith leaders, we see that there is an enormous capacity to drive transformational leadership. Why? Because faith is a way of life. It is embedded in life itself. And therefore, there is an enormous resource within faith leaders and faith actors to transform values and life patterns. So in order to bring about transformational change, for example, the way we are organized in societies, it's not sustainable. So we have to see a major systemic shift in how we organize our societies around, especially how we manage nature resources. So for this, we need to transform our minds, and their faith leaders are central. We also need more of the third one, systemic approach when it comes to system thinking. And I've seen in this conference that a lot of you, as participants, you have raised this. We can't anymore talk about environmental issues in isolation because there is such a strong linkage between environment and health. It's a strong linkage between human security, conflict, and environment. And I'm on an everyday basis now, I'm working a lot on the issue of water in the Middle East, and there it's clear to me that conflict sensitivity and environment, it's a very, very prevalent nexus there. We also see that we need to work in this nexus of human rights and environment. So by applying a more of a system approach, we are able to actually transform the planet and our lives. And here, I think, not only think, I've seen the evidence that faith actors have a key role to play. Why? Because faith actors do not exist because of development cooperation. They exist as a faith sector, regardless if it's development funding available or not. And therefore they operate outside these silos, these thematic silos of working only as an environmental NGO or health NGO or a gender NGO. So basically faith actors naturally work in all these different thematic areas and are therefore very well positioned to link and to work in these new nexus. The final one is about co-creation. We need rapidly to shift our minds from producing conferences and dialogues and workshops, moving to co-creation, the principle of creating together. And we really have seen example of this in this conference, where the regional hubs have worked together to set the content and the analytical base for the general discussions in this conference. And we really have to apply this. And this is what we did also back in March. We said that the conference content should be brought by the participants and not by the keynote speakers, because the solutions lie with you as faith leaders, as prominent participants in this conference. So the concept of co-creation is something that we need to continuously develop. And I think with all these rich experience that we're having now, with a number of global events and conferences where we have built on co-creation principle, we can take this further. When it comes to the way forward, because we have entered into that discussion in our conference, so how are we moving from here and now forward? We must find the keys to innovative partnerships between faith actors and other core actors on the ground. The very soul and heart of the 2030 agenda. I've got it here. I carry it with me, either as a stick if someone is not up to speed and has not yet accelerated, or I use it also as a carrot to say, this is an enormous rich resource to bring actors together. Local governments, regional governments, national governments, faith sector, faith actors, indigenous leaders, indigenous groups, and UN entities, academia, all actors together. And that is, I would say, to some extent, a new approach that we have to work from, because for too long we worked in silos as different actors group. Secondly, I want us to operate more actually from a global perspective, because we are all rooted in specific context, and we have seen this with the regional hubs in such a good way. Each region has its own unique characteristic, culturally, religiously, politically, socially, even when it comes to patterns of climate change, geography, natural resources, but still, we are depending on each other. We are one world, one globe, one humankind. And if we can operate more together and break down not only thematic silos, but also the geographical borders, to apply more of a global outlook and to see that many movements are represented all around the globe. And we have seen that even though the regional hub differs, many of the conclusions have been similar in the reports, in the global reports from the hubs. So for me, what I take from this conference, but also what I work with on a daily basis, is to really see how can we have the protection of our planet, the unique treasure that we are entrusted to care for.